You are about to hear a story that will truly warm your heart. It is the kind of story that reminds us how love can appear in the most unexpected places and between the most unlikely of friends. This story begins with a gentle cat. Her name is Mera. She lived quietly in an animal shelter, caring for her newborn kittens. But her life was about to change forever. One day, a group of tiny baby squirrels was brought to the shelter. Their mother was gone. They were helpless, cold, and alone. No one knew if they would survive. But what happened next surprised everyone. Instead of turning away, Mera did something that no one could have predicted. She accepted the baby squirrels as her own. What followed was a journey of love, care, and deep connection. A bond formed that ignored the rules of nature. A cat and a group of wild baby squirrels, growing up as one family. This is not just a story of survival. It is a story of kindness, of courage, and of the powerful love that can grow between different species. Stay with us as we take you through this beautiful true story, one that proves love has no boundaries. It was a regular spring morning when a team of workers headed into a local park to remove a few old trees. The job seemed routine, cutting down trees that had grown weak with time. But when one large oak tree fell to ground, something unexpected happened. Inside the hollow of the tree, the workers found a heartbreaking sight. Four tiny baby squirrels, barely a few days old. Their eyes were not even fully open. Their small bodies trembled with fear and cold. And there was no sign of their mother. The workers knew they had to act quickly. Without their mother's warmth and care, the baby squirrels would not survive for long. They gently picked them up and rushed them to the nearest animal shelter, hoping someone there could help. At the shelter, the staff immediately stepped in. They had helped many abandoned animals over the years, but caring for baby squirrels was something very delicate. These little creatures needed to be fed every few hours. They needed warmth, and they needed someone to keep them safe day and night. That is when one of the shelter workers had an idea that felt like a long shot, but was worth trying. There was a mother cat at the shelter named Mera. She had recently given birth to a litter of kittens and was known for her calm and loving nature. The staff wondered, could Mera possibly help? No one knew what would happen. After all, cats and squirrels are not known to get along. But in that moment of uncertainty, there was still a small spark of hope. What happened next would surprise everyone. With the baby squirrels wrapped gently in a soft blanket, the shelter staff approached Mera's enclosure. Their hearts were full of hope, but also worry. No one could be sure how a cat would react to animals that were so different from her own kind. As they placed the tiny squirrels near Mera, the room grew quiet. The staff watched closely. Mera sniffed the new arrivals, slowly and carefully. Her ears twitched. Her eyes studied them. Everyone held their breath. Would she turn away? Would her instincts tell her these creatures did not belong? But then, something truly remarkable happened. Instead of walking off or showing fear, Mera leaned in and began to gently lick the baby squirrels. One by one, she cleaned them, just as she did with her own kittens. Her movements were soft and full of care. It was a moment no one expected. A mother cat treating orphaned baby squirrels like they were her own. From that moment on, everything changed. Mera welcomed the squirrels into her little family without hesitation. She let them snuggle beside her, curling up in her warm fur. She nursed them. She wrapped her body around them at night, keeping them safe and warm. The squirrels, scared and confused at first, began to relax. They clung to Mera, drawn to her comfort and warmth. It was as if they knew they had found a new mother, a mother who did not care what they looked like, a mother who simply chose to love them. As the days passed, something beautiful began to unfold inside the shelter. The baby squirrels grew more comfortable in their new home, and their bond with Mera grew stronger with each passing hour. They no longer looked lost or frightened. Instead, they nestled into her fur, just like her kittens. They followed her closely, crawled onto her back, and even slept curled up beside her every night. Mera treated all her babies the same, whether they had soft fur or bushy tails. She bathed them, cuddled them, and kept them close. Her gentle care turned fear into safety and confusion into comfort. It was not just Mera who made this possible. The shelter staff worked day and night to help the baby squirrels grow strong. Mera's milk was not enough for all of them, so the staff bottle-fed the squirrels every few hours. It was a tiring job, but no one complained. They were determined to give these tiny animals a chance at life. Every moment felt special, whether it was a kitten sharing space with a squirrel or the sight of all the babies piled together, fast asleep in one warm bundle. Touched by what they were witnessing, a few staff members began sharing photos online. They simply wanted to show others the quiet miracle happening inside the shelter, but they had no idea how far the story would go. It did not take long for the world to notice. The photos of Mera caring for her kittens and her adopted squirrels quickly spread across the internet. People from around the globe were touched by the gentle cat who had opened her heart to animals so different from herself. Comments, messages, and emails came pouring in. Strangers reached out just to say how moved they were by the story. Many shared their own stories of kindness and love between animals. Others wanted to help in any way they could. Donations began arriving from far and wide. Some people sent food and supplies, while others gave money to support the shelter's work. The unexpected attention gave the shelter more than just resources. It gave them hope and encouragement. Soon, visitors began showing up in person. Families, animal lovers, and curious travelers came from nearby towns and distant cities, all hoping to catch a glimpse of the famous cat and her blended family. Mera, once just a quiet shelter cat, had become a local hero. Despite the attention, life inside the shelter stayed focused on care and growth. Mera continued her role as a loving mother. The baby squirrels and kittens grew stronger every day. Their little legs got sturdier, their eyes brighter, and their playful energy filled the room. Together, Mera and the shelter staff had created something rare and beautiful, a home where love had no limits. Time moved quickly, and the tiny squirrels who once fit in the palm of a hand were no longer so small. Their eyes were sharp, their movements quicker, and their natural instincts were beginning to show. They started climbing more, exploring every corner of their space, and showing signs that they were ready for something more. As much as they loved being with Mera, the wild was calling them home. The shelter staff knew this moment would come. It was never easy, but they had to do what was right. The squirrels were wild animals, and they needed to return to a place where they truly belonged, the forest. Slowly and gently, the staff began to prepare them for life outside the shelter. They reduced how often they were fed by hand and encouraged more independence. The squirrels were given time outdoors to explore in safe, natural areas. Every small step brought them closer to the world they were meant for. And then the day came. The shelter team chose a quiet, wooded area not far from where the squirrels had been found. With heavy hearts, they opened the carriers and waited. At first, the squirrels hesitated. They looked around, unsure what to do. But soon, their instincts took over. One by one, they ran off into the trees, climbing higher and higher until they disappeared into the leaves. Back at the shelter, Mera watched from a distance. She did not cry, and she did not chase after them. She simply sat quietly, her eyes calm, as if she understood. Her job was done. She had given them love, safety, and strength. Now, it was time for them to face the world on their own. Even after the squirrels were released, their story was far from over. From time to time, staff members would glance out toward the trees surrounding the shelter and catch a glimpse of familiar faces. Quick little shapes darting through branches, bushy tails flicking in the sunlight. Some believed it was the baby squirrels, all grown up, coming back to visit the place where they had once been saved. And perhaps, deep down, they remembered the warmth of soft fur, the feeling of safety, and the gentle care of a mother who was not their own, a mother who had loved them as if they were. Inside the shelter, Mera carried on with her life. She continued to care for new kittens, always calm, always nurturing. To her, she was simply doing what came naturally. Being a mother, but to the world, Mera had become something more. Her story inspired thousands. It reminded people that compassion does not follow rules. It does not stop at differences in size, shape, or species. Her quiet act of love showed that kindness can change lives, that sometimes The most beautiful families are formed not by blood, but by heart. Mera's story is not just about animals. It is about the power of love. Love that crosses boundaries. Love that defies nature. Love that chooses to care, even when it does not have to. And in a world that can feel divided, her story reminds us of something simple, yet powerful. Kindness can come from anyone and it can reach anyone. In the end, this story is more than just about a cat and a few baby squirrels. It is a story about love, the kind that breaks all the usual rules. A love that does not ask questions, that does not care about differences, and that shows up when it is needed most. Mera, a simple shelter cat, did something extraordinary. She opened her heart to 4 orphaned squirrels, creatures she was never meant to care for. And yet, she chose compassion over instinct. She chose to nurture instead of reject. She chose love. Through her quiet actions, Mera reminded us of something we often forget, that the bonds we form are not always about biology or appearances. Sometimes, the strongest families are the ones built from care, kindness, and connection. So the next time you think about how the world works, remember Mera and her baby squirrels. Remember that love does not always follow the rules. Sometimes it writes its own, and those stories are the ones that stay with us forever.